Hello and welcome to another Giant Slayer TFT Top 5 Countdown video. Today, our analyst will be listing the top 5 compositions for patch 10.19. As Set 4 is still new, expect the meta to shift constantly, so some of these builds may fall in and out as players continue to learn the set. And alongside that, the Chosen mechanic really opens the door for many playable compositions. With that said, let's jump on in. But before we get back to the video, don't forget to click the links in our description. Give your support to everyone who helped make this video happen. We host many TFT tournaments with plenty of exciting content to come, so be sure to also follow our Giant Slayer TFT social media pages. Alright, let's get back to the video. To start off our top 5, we have Cultist Jhin as the number 5 composition. Cultists are doing quite well in the current meta as an early and mid-game composition. Once it hits late game, they can struggle a bit, but it really depends on how the mid-game went to determine their final placing. And the mid-game for Cultist is all about protecting Jhin and allowing him to do as much damage as possible. Jhin is an all-around strong carry in the current meta and has use in a few comps. For Cultist, he's generally the main damage dealer alongside Callista and maybe even Evelynn. As for the rest of the composition, you're going to look for early 3 Cultists and try to hit 6 Cultists by the start of the mid-game. This does heavily rely on finding a Chosen Cultist, but that's not too uncommon as both Twisted Fate and Elise are 1-cost champions. If you're unable to find an early Chosen, then you may be able to still play early Cultist by finding either Pyke or an Evelynn. So what's the general composition for Cultist? Aatrox, Jhin, and Pyke are 3 must-haves for the build. Jhin is your damage, Aatrox is one of your frontliners, and Pyke is just a strong champion with good crowd control. After that, you can fill in the rest of the build with whichever cultist you want, though Evelynn and Callista are common. From there, you have several choices in terms of what to play alongside your cultist. Sharpshooter is a great addition to go with Jhin, and Kennen adds a ton of extra AoE, along with some defense if you have Elise for keeper. Once you're hitting level 8, it is possible to play 9 cultists, but again, you absolutely need a Chosen cultist to do so. Overall, this comp is best played in the early and mid game to try to win as many rounds as possible. Once you're hitting the late stages of the mid game, you can keep playing it and focus on Jhin as the carry, or you can begin to pivot into a different build. Use it as a strong template to play off with your Chosen champion dictating the path that you take. Let's move on to the next build. Coming in at number 4 on the list, we have Mage Reroll. There's quite a few reroll-based compositions floating around in the current meta. One of the stronger options that's begun creeping up recently is 6 Mage Reroll. The basic premise of this comp is you find an early Mage Chosen, either Twisted Fate or Annie, and try to 3-star the champions by slow rolling at level 5. Slow rolling should be a familiar concept, but for those unsure of what it is, it's simply hitting 50 gold and rolling away the excess gold each round above 50. The intent when rolling is to try to 3-star specific champions of whichever comp you're playing. In regards to Mage, your goal is to find Twisted Fate 3 and Annie 3. Other champions you can look to 3-star include Lulu, Nami, and Janna. Let's break down the typical gameplay flow for Mage Reroll. For starters, you want either a Twisted Fate Chosen Mage or an Annie. Nami is okay, but not as valuable as the other 2. Do not try to play this build without an early Chosen Mage, as it will struggle heavily. It's possible, but it's much less likely to succeed. Once you have your Chosen Mage, simply get to level 5 and begin slow rolling. The core of your comp at level 5 will be Twisted Fate, Annie, Nami, Lulu, and Veigar. If you get lucky and find an Ahri, put her in over Veigar. Slowly roll your gold looking for Twisted Fate 3 and Annie 3. Once you've hit Twisted Fate 3, you can stop rolling and instead level towards 7. At level 7, you'll want to play Janna, Yuumi, and get in Ahri if you haven't already. This combination will get you Mystic, Spirit, and Enlighten. Now you can keep slow rolling to find Annie 3 and if possible, Nami, Lulu, and Janna 3 as well. And that's it. It's a simple build to play, but it needs to have a good start with a Chosen Mage to do well. Before we move on, the items you'll want are basically spell power for Twisted Fate and defensive items for Annie. Titan's Resolve, Bramble Vest, and Hextech Gunblade are the top 3 items to give Annie, but you can mix and match depending on what components you have. Twisted Fate ideally wants a Death Cap and a mana item such as Blue Buff or Shojin. Next up, we have Sharpshooters as the number 3 composition. This is the point of the list where we hit less defined compositions. That is due to the Chosen mechanic, as it makes it possible to run many variations of different compositions. We'll mention the most common variations for Sharpshooter, but at its core, the build focuses on 4 to 6 Sharpshooters in the backline with 1 or 2 strong frontline champions. The most important units for this build are Jhin, Jinx, and Teemo. Nidalee and Vayne are basically just filler champions. Even if you 3-star them, they are not going to be your main carries. That means you'll want to focus on giving items to Jhin and Jinx. Jhin uses AD items like Infinity Edge, Giant Slayer, and Deathblade. Jinx wants to attack fast and build up mana, so look to give her a Shojin and a Rage Blade. The best defensive item for both champions is Quicksilver to help prevent them getting wrecked by CC. Now, let's talk about variations of this composition. Ideally, you'll want a Chosen Sharpshooter, as this allows you to play 6 Sharpshooter in the mid-game. Doesn't really matter which of the Sharpshooters is chosen, but it can dictate the flow of the game. If you find Nidalee or Vayne as your early Chosen Sharpshooter, you can go the route of re-rolling on level 5. You'll aim to hit Vayne 3, Nidalee 3, and Tahm Kench 3. Tahm Kench is one of the best solo frontlines that you can have until later on in the game, so he's perfect to try in 3-star. Once you have those champions level 3, you can begin leveling up and adding in other sharpshooters. Another variation uses Jinx as the chosen sharpshooter. In this case, you'll want to get to level 7 and re-roll for Jinx 3. Jhin becomes the secondary carry in this case, and you can run an assortment of frontline champions. Tahm Kench with another brawler is okay, but Sejuani with Aatrox is also one of the best front lines you'll be able to find. And the last variation is just playing a standard game. Get to level 7 and roll to find a chosen, preferably Jhin. Either way, your goal in this case is to play Jhin as the main carry. Once you've found him and you have your composition filled out, you can level to 8 and play a more standard mid to late game. It is possible to slow roll at this point as Jinx 3 is strong. It's also possible to aim for Jhin 3 if he's uncontested in the lobby. Overall, Sharpshooters are one of the strongest builds currently. They can struggle against Brawlers if you don't have Giant Slayer, and Assassins can be an issue, but positioning and items can also help against them. Up next, we've got Riven Dusk coming in at number 2. Again, we need to preface this by saying Riven as a carry can be played in many ways. This depends a lot on the chosen you find, which can be a multitude of different champions and traits. Which is why Riven as a carry is one of the most flexible in the mid-game because she can do well with practically anything. The core of the composition uses Riven as a carry with 4 Dusk. You can get by with just 2 Dusk, but it's preferable to have 4. 6 Dusk is also possible if you have a chosen Dusk champion. You'll want Thresh and Cassiopeia as the other Dusk units, with either Lilia or Vayne filling in as the 4th if you don't have a chosen Dusk. From that starting point, you can really play an assortment of anything. Mystic, Enlighten, Dazzler, and Adept all have common splash traits to play alongside Riven and Dusk. What it mainly comes down to is what chosen you find. But let's name a few champions you can commonly play with Riven and for Dusk. There's Morgana for Dazzler Enlightened, Shen for Adept Mystic, Irelia for Enlightened Divine and Adept, and Zillion for Mystic Cultist. Jhin is great to play with Riven as he provides physical damage alongside of her magic damage. Basically, try out different variations of the comp and see what's working and what isn't. Riven is the carry for this build, so your focus is on giving her extra damage while keeping her alive. As for items to give her, you have quite a few options. Baseline, you can aim for mainly defensive items as their damage is high enough with Dusk and she really doesn't need more damage. Quicksilver is often a necessity due to the amount of CC in the game. Guardian Angel is also ideal to give her a second life during the round. That said, if you have Zillion, you may not need GA. Bramble Vest can do wonders on Riven as it can prevent her from being one-shot by units like Jhin, Talon, or Akali. Sunfire Cape does well on Riven since she's moving around a lot in the fight and she can spread out the healing reduction effect. The goal for Riven carry compositions is to utilize her mobility, shields, and damage to outlast the enemy team. That means you have a lot of flexibility in what you play alongside of her. Aim to hit level 7 and find Riven, then flex in other champions based on what chosen you have and scout the lobby to see what synergies you need to splash in. Ideally, you can find a chosen Dusk, but it's not necessary to run Riven. And the last composition coming in today at number 1 is Ashe Elderwood Brawler. Okay, that's a bit of a long composition name, so we're simply going to say Ashe Builds. Much like the last 2 compositions we've covered, there's quite a few variations of these compositions that use Ashe as the main carry. The 2 most popular and common are 8 Brawler 3 Elderwood and 6 Elderwood 4 Brawler. There's also 9 Elderwood, but that's not as common and likely not as strong as the other 2. For today, our focus will be on the 2 most popular Ashe builds. To start, we have 8 Brawler, 3 Elderwood, which does need a chosen Brawler to be played. So if you're unable to find a chosen Brawler, you can simply play 6 Brawler and flex in other champions. The core champions of this build are Ashe, Nunu, and Maokai to get 3 Elderwood, with the rest being other Brawlers. Set is the most important late game champion for any Ashe build, as he's just really strong in the current meta. The second build using Ashe is 6 Elderwood, 4 Brawler. Again, your core is going to consist of Ashe, Nunu, and Maokai, with Set in the late game. Hecarim and Ezreal will be your priority for the other Elderwood champions, with Lulu and Veigar being stand-ins if you don't have a chosen Elderwood. In this build, you'll want to grab a Warwick as he provides both Brawler and Hunter. Basically, to play either composition, you need to find a chosen Brawler, Elderwood, or Ashe. Either of her traits is fine as a chosen unit. While you can find the first 2 traits early on, it's not necessary to do so, as your goal will be to get to level 7 and roll for Ashe. Once you find Ashe, you can play either variation, but you must find Ashe as she's the main carry. Ashe items can vary, but the current meta heavily favors 2 core items. One is Giant Slayer, the other is Quicksilver. Giant Slayer is a must as it helps Ashe shred through high health targets like Brawlers. Quicksilver is also necessary on practically every carry due to the amount of crowd control in set 4. The third item that you can play on Ashe is really up to what you find. Rage Blade, Death Blade, and Infinity Edge are all decent options. Hand of Justice is currently the most common, as it can provide either sustain from healing or additional damage. Other items to look for in this composition are an early Sunfire Cape for a Brawler to use, and decking out Set late game with items like Deathcap, Warmogs, and Bramble Vest. Lastly, for positioning, you simply want Ashe in the corner with all of the beefy Brawlers or Elderwoods in front of her. This protects her from assassins and any other champion that may be able to get onto her. Overall, Ashe compositions are super contested currently, so make sure you're scouting to see who may be playing her, as finding an Ashe 2 may be difficult. And a tip when playing against this build is make sure you have a Giant Slayer, as it helps tremendously when fighting against the Brawlers. That is going to be it for today's video, folks. While we only covered 5 compositions today, keep in mind that set 4 has many more possible comps. We fully expect the meta to grow and shift as players learn how to properly play the new set. Let us know in the comment section below what compositions you've been doing well with. Thank you for watching, and if you're enjoying our content, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for future Giant Slayer TFT videos.